All they ever do is to steal loot and denying our face. The government is an abomination. I swear, my brother, no respect for humanity. Fake pastor who do not know God are made ambassadors to smuggle gold. Charlatans like a ransom. Uber devil, nothing angelic about him. J Israel and crew, criminals with a Bible fake prayer so they can fool the evil regime. Oh, shameless musicians like Ja Preza, Olivia, gospel mafia. You have no idea, it's broken. Broken to pieces and Lutex prison officer, shepherding youth. Zimai, give to Salos, I forget contact. Our country is broken, stolen and torn apart. Hand in hand. How do I tell my story? The future of Zimbabwe is in a sorry state. And how do I shout for justice? Girlfriends are made ministers, corruption silenced our mouth. Yeah. Zimbabwe is broken, mama. Mama. Yeah. Can I tell you my story? Back in the day, this country was working. Listen, brother, you Zimbabwe.
As can I tell you a story, mama? Zimbabwe is broken. As can we all salute ex-prison officer or prison officer Shepherd Yuda. Thanks cleaned. It looked so dirty. Miteuro nenge chikushwa ona. Miteuro kumwaya kuti mweya tsvina imbobuda inotera mweya yeZANU-PF inenge ida kutera kudzipa hawo isusu takazvigarira tichikurukura nyaya dzenyika yeZimbabwe. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just welcome you for 30 minutes. I'm going to make this presentation for 30 minutes. I can extend a little bit of more time if things go well, because I've got loads of things to discuss here. Right. The first thing that I need to talk about this evening, it's about constitutional amendments and the extension of presidential term. I'm going to quote a case that was held in our constitutional courts in Zimbabwe, Jealous Mawarire versus Robert Gabriel Mugabe. That constitutional court, it solved our problem. What Zimbabweans are scared today. The Jealous Mawarire case, I can refer you guys, you can Google that case where Jealous Mawarire was against the term extension of President Robert Mugabe to about 4 or 6 months. That was requested by the opposition, including the late President Morgan Tsvangirai, who was then the Prime Minister. As I heard your name on the song, yes, I can play the song again. The singer said, you must salute Shepherd Yuda, a prison officer. It's because I've stood for the people of Zimbabwe. And I never delved or went astray or left the struggle for any reasons. I have been in this struggle since 2000, since 1999, 2000 until today. So I'm still etching or fighting for the betterment of you guys, for a free Zimbabwe. And I've joined an organization, the Yes I Can, which I have even said to you guys, if you are a Zimbabwean willing to see a free Zimbabwe in our lifetime, there is an organization known as Yes I Can, Free Zimbabwe. Freedom is coming. That organization, I am telling you, is ready to confront ZANU-PF head on in what we call a tit-for-tat basis. If ZANU-PF abducts any one of Zimbabweans, the Yes I Can is prepared to use even military style of rescuing those people being abducted. Even if they are kept in the commando barracks, the Yes I Can has got some people trained to fit or suit any situation. If it means military action, the Yes I Can people can do that, can go and retrieve you, can even enter the commando barracks to make sure that you are freed. Even if you are put in group maximum prison, when we know you have got no crimes committed, the Yes I Can even deploy 10,000 to 10 million people on the streets and throw group maximum prison just to free one freedom fighter incarcerated there. So Yes I Can is a project that people must come together. You must join. I've joined it. So you must join the Yes I Can movement. So tonight I'm going to talk about constitutional amendment and the extension of presidential term. The two seems to be different ideas, but let's find out, are these two different ideas? Let's take the term amendment on its face value. What does that term mean? The term amendment is a formal, it is like a formal change. If we say amendment, is a formal change made to law. Formal change made to law in regards to legal documents, update or correct it. It allows the adjustment, or it allows for adjustment to be made to existing documents. When these amendments are made or adjustments are made, it needs to reflect new circumstances or correct mistakes that has been happened. So we are talking of amendment of mistakes. If you made a mistake, there is an amendment that is supposed to be done. And once that amendment is done, then this must reflect a new circumstance. To say, look, we made an error, we made a mistake, so we have amended that error. It is supposed to be read like this. So that means you can add or you can update part of the agreement. You can add or you can update the constitution of a country. And this is often used when it is better to change the documents than to write the entire new constitution. So what I'm saying here, let's understand the word amendment. The word amendment refers to correcting something that where a mistake has been done. So if you are to correct, this is the face value meaning, the dictionary meaning of the word amendment. What it is supposed to mean when you go for an amendment. This must be a formal change. When it is a formal change, it is made to a law. If we've got a law, for a good example, we are talking about the Constitution of Zimbabwe here, the supreme law of the country. So if we are talking about the supreme law of the country, when there is an amendment to be done in that supreme law, we must be correcting it, correcting the Constitution of Zimbabwe, so that it reflects new circumstances. So we can add something to the Constitution, or we can update the Constitution. So we say an amendment is done because we don't want to write the whole Constitution. So we do an amendment to the Constitution because we don't want to rewrite the whole Constitution. This is when we talk about constitutional amendment. We are avoiding writing the whole Constitution. So we add or remove something or update something to a section of the constitution. Any amendment of the constitution in Zimbabwe, it must be done via a referendum. It must be done via a referendum. Because we are amending the supreme law of the country. Mapabata erema Zimbabweans. You must understand this. It's very simple. Then we go to an extension. People are talking about a term extension of a president. Emerson Mnangagwa. Zimbabweans, not Zimbabweans, but ZANU-PF people. We are talking about ZANU-PF people. They want to make sure that the term of a president is extended beyond his 5-year term, his 2 terms, constitutional terms. What is an extension means? What does that mean? That means extension typically refers to an increase in the duration of a contract. Let's say we have got a contract with the president of Zimbabwe, and that contract must take 2 terms. That's it. Then certain individuals around the president, they feel like, oh, the president is doing great job, this and that and that. Quite a lot of things that they feel like the president is doing. And they want the 5-year terms to be extended. They want his term to be extended. So the duration, the 5-year term duration is supposed to be extended with the 2 more years to 7 years. Because 2028, 2029 and 2030, these are 2 more years that Mnangagwa is seeking to extend his term with. And he is seeking to extend his term or his contract with the people of Zimbabwe. So the agreement allowing for additional time to fill or to fulfill his obligations is supposed to be substantiated as again by the constitution of the country. This is where Jealous Mawarire's case against Robert Mugabe comes in. The extension of the presidential term. I remember, let me give a thank you to my Sekuru, who just gave me, who phoned me this afternoon and said, you guys, where are you getting this wrong? I said, Sekuru, why? He said, look, there is Jealous Mawarire's case against Robert Mugabe using the current constitution. Jealous Mawarire challenged us in MDC to say, look, you guys, you want this term, Mugabe's term extended to about a 6. It was during the government of national unity. And the people thought at least 6 months extension would allow finalization of adoption of some electoral changes to reflect a democracy in our country. But Jealous Mawarire was not happy. ZANU-PF felt it was ready for an election. Then ZANU-PF wanted to use Jealous Mawarire at that time to stop the extension. And they said the extension was unconstitutional. And Chief Justice Malava, it was Chijgausiku, who ruled that extension of Mugabe's term to 6 months so that electoral reforms can be achieved. It was unconstitutional. And other judges agreed with Chijgausiku. We appealed against that, that judgment. And it went to Malava. Chief Justice Malava supported Chijgausiku's verdict to say, look, extending that term, it would mean Mugabe was running a country without parliament because parliamentary term would have expired. So it was now unconstitutional. And the Jealous Mawarire won that court case. And we know the law in Zimbabwe. It's all about precedence. What we want to do today, we look at what has been passed as judgment by other courts elsewhere. This is why you see Chief Justice Malawa was quoting the Malaysian case, was quoting the Kenyan case, and he spoke about another country's case which were cited in this challenge. And eventually, he came out with a verdict to say Jealous Mawarire was right, and therefore Mugabe's term could not be extended. It was unconstitutional, and Mugabe had to proclaim the election date for 2013. This was to ZANU-PF's advantage. And that same ZANU-PF we are talking about is the same that is now seeking extension of Emmerson Mnangagwa's term. How does that work? This is where we are. This is where the confusion is. We are talking of a confused ZANU-PF now, which stopped term extension of Robert Mugabe, and now wants to extend. I think during Mugabe's term, we just wanted 6 months to make sure everything is done and signed. But Malawa, ZANU-PF refused. Wanachina Masa refused. They appealed. they approached the courts through Jealous Mawarire, who was then being pushed by ZANU-PF to say, look, you guys, you just send this. Vakatogarwa pasi nemagweta ezanu. Vakatoona no. Term extension of Mugabe would allow kuti zvisainwe manhingirina asainwa patopinda muelection vafana vada kutotsvaira. Then Jealous Mawarire approached the courts and stopped that term extension, because it was unconstitutional to be done so. Then Mugabe was forced to proclaim an election date, which we went into. And we were not very prepared for that election. ZANU-PF had done its homework and said, look, with everything that we have done so far, we can defeat opposition heavily. And when the results came out in 2013, nobody knew how we were defeated. Nobody knew. Election was stolen. But how was that election stolen? Nobody had an idea. You see? So now, it suits ZANU-PF's agenda to say we want Mnangagwa's term extended, this time by 2 years. But they refused Mugabe's term to be extended by 6 months. So what does this mean in summary, ladies and gentlemen? An amendment involves changes to the original document or the constitution. An extension pertains to the duration of a scope of an existing agreement. So we have got an existing agreement with Emmerson Mnangagwa that he must serve only 2 terms and go. And the ZANU-PF feel Mnangagwa must extend his term to 2 years. With the 2 years, he must have 2-year extension of the term. The same ZANU-PF forget that in 2013, they refused Mugabe's term to be extended by just 6 months to allow signing of the electoral amendments, which we wanted done. But it was never done, and we went into an election. Tigununguna, we went there. And that election, up to now, nobody can tell exactly what went wrong in the 2013 election. So extending, for instance, term to 7 years does not amount to a term limit. These are lies, because ZANU-PF is lying. It wants now to extend Mnangagwa's term to 7 years. This is a lie, guys. This will never happen, because both the amendment and the extension, they must be guided by the constitution of our country. So opposition, as you see today, that the opposition we thought we made, we thought we constructed, we thought we created, being led by Welshman Mnangagwa today, with his Secretary General Shabang. This is a rogue opposition that we have. This rogue opposition has endorsed this term extension. I don't understand Professor Welshman Mnangagwa, because he's a constitutional lawyer. He must be clear about everything that is happening. He is going into this marriage with ZANU-PF, fully aware that all of these are unconstitutional amendments, unconstitutional extension of Mnangagwa's term. And he is happy to give Mnangagwa a third term. I don't understand why we have such an unconstitutional lawyer heading an opposition political party that has become rogue to rogue. That has paid deaf ear to the cries of the people of Zimbabwe, to the suffering of the people of Zimbabwe. They are relying now on Section 91, subsection 2 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. Section 143 and subsection 1 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. Section 158, subsection 1A of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, and Section 328 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, subsection 7. These are the sections of the Constitution that they are trying to rely on, which I am happy if Professor Welshman Mnangagwa can come out open. He is a constitutional lawyer. Unfortunately, I don't have the legal mind to unpack Section 91, Section 143, Section 158, and Section 328. These sections, they need a legal expert to unpack them so that people can really understand what's going to happen now. This is the loophole the bastards are going to try and exploit to avoid referendum. In their bid to extend Mnangagwa's term and to extend the parliamentary term, that means presidential and parliamentary terms, by another 2 years. So they are trying to bastardize or trying to exploit these sections that I've stated here. If you have got time as a Zimbabwean, guys, let's learn to read the constitution of the country. It's particularly Section 91, subsection 2, Section 143, subsection 1, Section 158, subsection 1A, and the Section 328, subsection 7 of the supreme law of the country. I will look into some other analysts. I'm going to look on both sides and probably come with a verdict at the end of this presentation. I am also going to look at Jealous Mawarire's application in the High Court, which was decided by Justice Chavunduka, who said extension of presidential term is illegal. That means we are debating an issue that has already been resolved by the Constitutional Court. So this is a dead horse. Trying to extend Mnangagwa's term by 2 years, it's a dead horse. It's only a thing that is being advocated by lazy, shallow-minded people, ignorances in very limited intellectual capacity. These people, these ignoramuses, these shallow-minded ZANU-PF people who are advocating for term extension, who knows the term limits is limited by the Constitution of Zimbabwe. They want to just articulate their ignorance, or they just want to argue for the sake of arguing. But what I'm telling you is this is just a dead horse. a dead horse, and they hope to utilize or use a rogue opposition. Triple C has now turned into a rogue opposition. So let me look at what this Tawanda Nyambirai, this one is a veteran lawyer and a prominent businessman. Mr. Nyambirai, he wrote something about this term extension. He is not talking about the constitutional amendment. This is what ZANU-PF is avoiding. Because they know any constitutional amendment must have a referendum, must be approved by the people of Zimbabwe. So they are trying to avoid the term amendment, constitutional amendment. And they want to use the term extension. They are aligning themselves more to the term extension, not constitutional amendment. These are two terms that are being bastardized by shallow-minded jackasses in ZANU-PF, those lazy people who just want to rely on stealing, looting, whilst the masses are suffering. So a veteran lawyer and a prominent businessman known as Tawanda Nyambirai, he has steered controversy, ladies and gentlemen, after saying there is legal loophole. Remember, I've talked about section 91 subsection 2, section 143 subsection 1, section 158 subsection 1A, and section 328. So where they are trying to use them as a loophole. This is what the loophole Tawanda is trying to steer controversies in. He's saying in the Zimbabwe constitution, on the length of the presidential term of office for President Emerson Mnangagwa to extend his rule, even though there are term limits. He's saying there is a loophole here, even though there are term limits, but the loophole is there. So let's see where Tawanda thinks the loophole is, where Mr. Nyambirai, a prominent lawyer and a businessman, thinks the loophole is. He is saying Nyambirai is not the first high-profile person to raise the non-liquid "it is not clear" argument on this, as Professor Jonathan Moyo has been writing about it for a while. Jonathan Moyo as well, we all know who is Professor Jonathan Moyo and what that man is capable of doing. He is the author of Zimbabwe's demise. Imagine a country was destroyed by a ballpoint pen by a professor. We all know who Jonathan Moyo is. He has been writing about this loophole as well. Where is this loophole? So this comes as the recent ZANU-PF conference in Mutare adopted a resolution for Mnangagwa to extend his rule beyond the 2028 second term constitutional limit to 2030. Let's see. We want to see where the loophole is. So the phenomenon is widespread in Africa, where incumbents subvert term limit constitutional frameworks to extend their rule. ZANU-PF, following on the footsteps of many other authoritarian regimes across the continent, is looking for a pathway to extend Emerson Mnangagwa's term without going through a referendum, as required by the Constitution of Zimbabwe, to manage his succession battle, claiming it is not a requirement. This has caused a pandemonium in the country, where constitutional lawyers like Welshman Nue, Lovemo Maduku, and Tendai Biti say that will be unconstitutional. But Nyambirai and others say there is a lacuna or just a loophole to do it. Nyambirai wrote unedited, it's not edited, that section 91 and 95 and section 328, so 91, 95, 328 of the Zimbabwe Constitution do not require a referendum to introduce a 7-year presidential term, and do not prohibit a sitting president from benefiting from the 7-year term. This is what Nyambirai is saying. So he's saying, law is still my passion. Tawanda is saying that. But I have not practiced it for too long. So rather than make submissions on the whole constitution, I will limit my submissions to section 91, section 95, and section 328. This is what Nyambirai is saying. He's saying he hasn't been in practice for too long. So he's looking at the constitution of Zimbabwe, certain sections that he thinks there is a loophole for Mnangagwa to use without a referendum to extend his constitution to 7 years, his term to 7 years. So much has been written about section 91, ladies and gentlemen. It deals with the number of terms and not the duration of a single term. So he is saying section 91 of our constitution deals with the duration, not number of years. Not a single term, but the duration. So his concern is the duration of a single term. Therefore, he said he will not say more about section 91. Then he jumped into section 95, which appears to acknowledge that there is or could be another provision elsewhere that sets out presidential terms. The 5-year term limit seems to only apply in the absence of another provision to the contrary elsewhere in the Constitution. So it referred to section 95, says in subsection 2 that the term of office of the president or vice president extends until he or she resigns or is removed from office. B. Following an election, he or she is declared to be re-elected or a new president is declared to be elected. Then he went on to say, and except as otherwise provided in this constitution, their terms of office are 5 years and conterminous with the life of parliament. Arikutaura iye kuti term limit ya president inoperawo panopera parliament ya parliament ikati 5 years ga zvakwana, term yake yeupresident wenobva yati ga zvakwana 5 years dzakwana. Anditi maona. So he's saying if this is correct, there is nothing to stop ZANU-PF through parliament and without referendum from introducing a new constitutional provision providing for presidential term limits other than the 5-year limit. Apa panjengwa, apa patwa circumvent something that is important. Ndoda kuti ndipaverenge foot maZimbabweans tinzwisise tifambirane pamwe chete. Nyambirai is a lawyer who hasn't practiced for too long. I don't know whether he's a constitutional lawyer or just a criminal lawyer. But what he says is he hasn't practiced the law for a long time. But he said on section 95, per section 95, subsection 1, subsection 2, section 95 of our constitution, the term of office of the president or a vice president extends until he or she resigns or is removed from office. Mapabata ipapo. No bind up a B akat. It extends until following an election. This is clear English. I'm body legal mind. The term of office of the president and of a vice president extends until he or she resigns or is removed from office. Or it extends until following an election. He or she is declared to be re-elected or a new president is declared to be re-elected. So Nyambirai is trying to rely on this section to say ZANU-PF, there is nothing that can stop ZANU-PF to extend the term limit. I think something is now ringing in your mind that Nyambira is trying to circumvent something here, because the subsection he chooses to rely on is saying the term of office extends until we are resigning or extends until paitwa election iyoyo yaita say ya declared panumwe president saka uya asiri president. So saka tukutaura isusu kuti election inoitwa 2028 masimba ekuti Mnangagwa panopera term yake o extender iye extender say because pana panyambira ari kuti he can extend it until an election is done. Andimona, or until he's removed or resigned from the position of president. Saka ari kufunga kuti this is a loophole. Saka man ndataura pakudaona nelegal mind. Tobvunza vana biti kuti saka anogona here kuti panopera term yake oramba aripo kusvika abviswa, oramba aripo kusvika aita sei aresigna, kana kuti panoitwa maelection iye aripo kana adyiwa po panzi ngaaite step down. No section is kutaura. It's clear English here, but to me it doesn't seem like a loophole to extend a term. It doesn't seem like that. It's just a vague section here that ZANU-PF is trying to rely on. So Nyambirai said, an except as otherwise provided in this constitution, their terms of office are 5 years and conterminous with the life of parliament. Aruti section yake ikumberu. Zota, however, avana vanobvumirwa chete 5 years zvichiendera nekurarama kunenge kuchita parliament. Kana parliament ichinzi 5 years, ava vakuru ava i5 years futi. Ndo zvakazopera section 95 yake subsection 2 ichitaura kumberi uku. Saka tikutaura kuti if this is correct, Nyambirai ari kuti there is nothing to stop ZANU-PF through parliament and without referendum from introducing a new constitutional provision providing for presidential term limits other than 5-year limit. Nyambirai ndo paarasika manje. As Nyambirai has given ZANU-PF the ammunition to extend term limit. It's not that he has given them, but he is leading them astray. Because chinzwa zvaakataura Mkoma Freedom Zulu, I want you to listen here what he said. He said if this section, what this section is true or is correct what it is saying, Nyambirai said there is nothing to stop ZANU-PF through parliamentary and without referendum from introducing a new constitutional provision. Once he mentioned a constitutional provision, that means there is a need of a referendum. That will be a constitutional amendment. It's not just a term extension. it will be a constitutional amendment. Remember when I started this presentation, I said an amendment is a formal change. Saka Nyambirai cannot say ZANU-PF can make formal changes to the constitution of the country. Those formal changes, as long as they are amendments, they require a referendum. They cannot be changed by parliament. The bills, of course, can go through the parliament, the senate, whatever, but you need to take them to the people for a referendum so the country can say yes. We are talking about a few ZANU-PF crooks here, people with a shallow mind who are gathered here to think it is easy for them to make a constitutional amendment. When Nyambirai said a constitutional provision, already it refers back to the referendum issue. So ZANU-PF has got no power to use the parliament to extend the term. Because section 95 of subsection 2, it is saying until, there is a word here, until that person is removed from office, or until an election is held and that person is defeated. He can stay there until. However, in that section again, Kumberu, term yacho is only 5 years. Ichiendera term ye parliament. Ndofunga zviri kunzwika zvatiri kutaura panapa. Saka it's an uphill task. ZANU-PF thinks this is a loophole, which is not a loophole. Nyambirai went on to say, put it differently, there is nothing to stop parliament with the necessary majority from introducing a clause that says, he is talking about the parliament. We all know when things goes to parliament, we must statutory. It's not constitutional. There is nothing that can stop parliament with the necessary majority from introducing a clause that says a presidential term limit shall be subsection 7, shall be 7 years, 8 years, or 10 years. Such a provision would not amend section 95, assuming it is the only section that provides for a presidential term limit of 5 years. Such an insertion would apply to the sitting president without failing foul of section 328 subsection 7, because the insertion will not be an amendment. Mapanza ndasvika panakanichitaura paya kuti vanhu vari kutaura about extension, trying to avoid the word amendment. But when you insert something into the constitution of the country, it is just an amendment. This is something that is not there. You are trying to correct something, to say, with the 5 years, Zakataura is not correct. We need 7 years. So when you need 7 years, you cannot correct the constitution in parliament. It needs a referendum. Saka, Nyambirai is back to what I am saying here. Kuti parliament inogona kuda kuti Mnangagwa vaite 7 years. Parliament inogona kuda kuti Mnangagwa vaite 8 years. Parliament inogona kuda kuti Mnangagwa vaite 10 years. Parliament ikagara pasi ne 2/3 majority vanogona kuzvinyora izvozvo. But for them kuti vachizvitora vanozviisa muconstitution yenyika yatove an amendment to that section. Yakuda a referendum. Saka for Nyambirai to say this is a loophole, that is not a loophole. It can be used in parliament. They can use it to senate. Hakuna anovarambidza. But for them kuitora manje, amendment yavaita iyoyo kana zvavataura kuti zvive supreme law of the country, zvakuda a referendum. Ndofunga mukoma Nyambirai vari kuzvinzwa zvandiri kutaura izvi. Kuti parliament hakuna kunoistop. Nothing can stop parliament from doing unconstitutional things. Nothing. They can sit vari 210. they can agree kuti ndozvatinoda kuti zviitwe, but havasi ndo referendum ka. Vanogona kunyora, but they cannot put it or they cannot insert it as an amendment in our constitution. So there is no loophole here. Zvakuda vanhu vane legal mind kuzviunderstand izvi. Kuzvakuda vana biti kuti vataurire vanhu chokwadi. Because section 320 and section 320, because the insertion will not be an amendment to a term limit provision. Ndo parukurasika mudhara anyambirai. Kuti kana vakutaura kuti parliament yagara pasi yaita agree kuti ngatipe Mnangagwa up to 7 years achitonga. Akutaura kuti ngazviitwe insert in the constitution of the country. Once atongobata kuti zvakuitwa inserted into the constitution of the country, automatically that becomes an amendment. It's not just a provision. And that amendment would require a referendum according to the constitution of Zimbabwe. So Nyambira said it will simply be an insertion. There is nothing like that. Law. Because it will be simply an insertion to fill a gap or a lacuna in the constitution. Hakuna zvagadaro. Uzaiva nyambirai kuti mudhara hakuna zvakadaro. Kuti hanzi unongotora constitution yeZimbabwe, then you insert what you want. Ngadaite sechiinseta zvatoda. Kuti you insert what you want imomo is not an amendment. Hakuna zvakadaro. Saka there is no loophole, unfortunately. So it appears the drafters of the constitution did not themselves know the duration of the term of office they wanted. If they wanted a 5-year term, it must have been very easy to just say that the duration of a presidential term shall be 5 years rather than frame section 95 the way they did. So Wanyambirai is relying on section 95, one section chet, but varikutaura kuti hanzi parliament can insert in a constitution. Izvozvo ndo zvandiri kuramba. Hakuna zvakadaro kuti parliament ndo zvayataura nhasi yobva yati chinjai pakati muconstitution ngazva zvanyorwa. Iyi yatova amendment. So that amendment cannot be done by parliament. It can only be done through a referendum. So Nyambira is saying, I am not advocating for an amendment of the constitution. Kuda kunzvenga kwadzirura kuita ndofuka dzinoda kuGD dzinoda kupowo maGD6 ari kugoverwa vanhu dzazonyora manje pasapa. And I am not advocating for an amendment of the constitution. I am merely pointing out that there appears to be nothing stopping ZANU-PF through parliament from inserting. What stops ZANU-PF? Mkoma Maxwell Mchabaiwa, how are you, my brother? What is he's saying? I am merely pointing out that there appears to be nothing stopping ZANU-PF through parliament from inserting a 7-year presidential term provision in the constitution without amending or contradicting section 95. Once ZANU-PF utilizes or uses parliament to insert this thing, it will be an amendment. Ndopa makanzopa chitaura namadhuku na Tendai Biti. Akati any amendment of the constitution, it requires a referendum. If ZANU-PF, if parliament thinks yes, we need that section to be inserted there, definitely it will be an amendment. And that amendment will not benefit the current president. It will be 7 years for the next president. Our term yao inenge yatopera no agreement yavakaita nevana veZimbabwe. Anything that will be done after ipapapa hazvichabati vakuru ava. Vakuru vanenge vakunze ndai muzorora nokuti zvazvisiri zvenyu izvi. Presidential term yaakutaurwa haisi iyo iri muconstitution. Bata ipapa maZimbabweans. Presidential term yatiri kutaura nezvayo haisiri iri muconstitution. Any extension or any amendment of the constitution from today, it will be a presidential term that will come after this one expires. No chete zviri kutaurwa nemagweta nema-constitutional lawyers. Could the presidential term which are affected? It's not this one. Because this one is already served by the constitution. And we bagaenda election right was if 5-year terms zvatopera. Kana makuita amendment, it does not touch the current term, but it will look into the next term after this one expires according to the amendment that would have been done. Saka ndozvi kutaurwa nevakuru ava kuti hanzi musection 95 hamuna chinostopa vaMnangagwa. Zvirimo zvinostopa vaMnangagwa because term yavo agreement yatinawo nayo icontract yatakaita nawo yekuti vakuru muchagara hapo 5 years and 5 years then zviri kupera rini. Saka anything chichazoitwa from now onwards zvichienda mberi hazvichabenefit the current or the incumbent. It will benefit the next president who is coming in if this amendment has gone through. Saka Mngoma Nyambirai, I think vanoda kudzidziswazve. I've got another look, another side of this story, and I think it's both sides now. Saka yamkoma Nyambirai tainzwa tese. Unfortunately, Tawanda Nyambirai, my brother, zvaari kutaura azviite and azvibatsire ZANU-PF. Otherwise, dziri kutonyudza ZANU-PF voice. Kana mbiti dzeZANU-PF idzi dai dzaiteerera izvi musateerera zvachitaurwa naMukoma Nyambirai, because once you talk of an amendment, maakutotaura zvekuenda kureferendum. Ndataura panapa ndikati tiri kutaura nezve-term extension, tiri kutaura nezve-constitutional amendment. Saka ndauya ndikati nini, in constitutional amendment or amendment in general has a formal change. The meaning of amendment in general, it has got a formal change made to law, made to local legal documents, or update or correct a legal document or a constitution to allow or to adjust or to allow adjustment to be made in the existing constitution or in the existing document. So if we allow amendments to be made, we need it to reflect new circumstances. Ndopandoti mubate ipapo mazimba. Mkoma Tawanda Nyambirai, bata ipa ndiri kutaura ipapo. Pekuti once an amendment is done or an adjustment has been done to a legal document like a constitution, or an update has been done, or something has been corrected in the constitution, that is what we call an amendment. Because once amendment is done, it reflects a new circumstances, or we have corrected a mistake in our constitution, or we have amended a mistake to our constitution and we have updated it. That means we have updated the agreement that we have with Emerson Mnangagwa kusvika term yake yapera. Saka hazvichakwanisi kuzomuava kuti zvizospila into the next term, hazvichaiti Mukoma Nyambirai, because if the mistake is done, it's a constitutional mistake and it will take Mnangagwa to the end of his second term. Saka tatinini tiri kutaura nezve extension. Extension in generally, the meaning of extension means typically refers to an increase in the duration of a contract or agreement, allowing for additional time to fill obligations or terms. So I'm saying this can be done by parliament. We all agree. Apana nenharo, nekuti parliament can sit with a 2/3 majority and extend the term of president to 7 years. But the issue is, how is the parliament going to to put that in a constitution? Because if they try to do it without constitutional amendment, the people of Zimbabwe will stop it, because it has to go through a referendum for an amendment to the constitution to be done, to be corrected. So, Mngoma Nyambirai, we agree with you. There is totally nothing that can stop the parliament to extend Emerson Mnangagwa's term to 7 years. But it's not applicable in our constitution. You need to take and insert whatever the parliament has said in the constitution. Tampering with that constitution is what we call an amendment. And that amendment to be done, it needs a referendum. Saka, musanyanyo zibasha, mkomanyambere, don't bash him too much. Because sometimes, legal terms are anomboti rasi say, isusu wana shepherd, takaita advantage, takaverenga wana forensic scientist, wana forensic science. Wana forensic science, vanoda munane sharp mind who is keen. Anokwanisa kupika my difficulties in any situation. I should highlight each and every difficulty in any situation. Saka ndabata zvazviri kutaurwa nemazanu PF. Mazanu vari kutaura zvavari kutaurawo, avarambidzwe kutaura. Vakaenda ku conference yavo, avapana novarambidza kuhold a conference. Conference ndeyavo, ndeye political party yavo. What resolutions they pass in their political party. Yakafana resolution yekuburial society. Yakafana ne resolution inoitwa kuzvigure. That zvigure zvikaita resolution yazvo uku azvikwanise kuuya zvakabata constitution yenyika kuti pa constitution yenyika apa pari wrong kuti munyoro kuti zvigure zvichada 7 years dzekutamba. Andoona azviitike izvozvo. Bo ZANU PF is not Zimbabwe. ZANU PF is a political party like any other political party. Atingati resolution yaitwa neMDC youya nayo wana monzora voti taisa resolution yedu ingaipinde muconstitution. Azviitike izvozvo. Resolution yaitwa neCCC uko cannot be inserted in the constitution. Resolution yaitwa neZANU PF cannot be inserted in the constitution because constitution haisi a party. They can amend their party constitution, but they cannot amend the supreme law of Zimbabwe. They can't do that. So ZANU PF's agreement is being advocated by lazy and shallow people. Their ignorances, they don't want to reason. They are shallow in mind. And more. What is their intention? Is because these people, they lack intellectual capacity. Kana vari vanachina masa chayo apana law inozikanwa vanachina masa. Dopa makuona kuti paangari Attorney General Bible, a lot of people were just sent to prison. Vasina mhosva yakapara nanachina masa. Saka because they lack this intellectual capacity to scrutinize things, kana kuda kuona kuti apa izvazviite kwavari vanofunga kuti zvisingaite zvinoitika. Anoona. So it's very unfortunate, ladies and gentlemen. Ndanakirwa na mkoma reason wafaroa. Apana asingamuzive wafaroa. At one time ndakamboti wafaroa reason ndikakubata kambokubvarura. Because murume andakabata ballpoint pen anonyora zvimwe zvinhu zvokuti kana nokazviverenga unoshamisika kuti munhu anogara kumazere. Munhu agare kuEarth. Zimbabwe haizive. Anokurambira chinhu reason wafaroa. Chinhu chekuti unoti but chinhu chiri clear. Vanhu vese tiri kuona vanhu vari kupondwa nezano vanoti sei reason anotaura hakuna munhu akapondwa nezano. Hakuna munhu akaabductwa nezano PF. Anonyora because reason wafaroa anoziva kuti this is a pen is the mightiest sword. Ballpoint pen yakaipa. Ndosaka uchiona majournalists all over the world vakaenda kana pa front line vanopfurwa. Journalists haende nepfuti kuhondo. Anoenda kururira mabhazuka mabhambo achidonha. Journalists anenge arimo nepepa achinyora. Because this is mightier than any weapon. This is the most dangerous weapon. This one. Because pfuti ikarira ikakupfura kana ikaita sei pana banyere yaenda zvatopera. Zvinonyorwa nechinhu ichi zvinogara kusvika nyika ino yaparara. So this is the worst the weapon that I've ever made. Ukaona munhu achigara achisvinha musodzi akabata chinhu chachinyora, be very careful. This is the mightiest weapon in the world. Saka vanhu journalists are people who really understand how to use this thing. Vana mukoma hope watching on. Be very careful now, because they know how to use this thing. Vana Simba Chikanza, be very careful now, because they know how to use this thing. Vana reason wafaro, Be very, very careful now. Because this is their weapon. This is their AK assault rifle. This is their atomic bomb. When you take pen to paper to put something in black and white, I'm not gonna condemn. I'm not gonna do one like a dictator. I'm not gonna do one like you are Hitler. Wakoma now. But the reason wafaro aneme article ya anyora, which I've shared it on my Facebook page. I would advise people to go read and comment. He said a 2030 term extension is a dead horse. This is what reason wafaro said. He said one clear thing about the 2030 term extension agenda is that it is being advocated by shallow-minded ignoramuses. Idzotuka idzi. Idzotuka. Ini nakamboda untuka ndikamuti blazi uri pa Australia apa. Ndokwirira ndege. Indokwirira ndege. Ndokuika pa Australia apa. Ndosvika ndokuti ndi pahuro. Andokubvunza taura zvawaitaura. Ataura bhozika. Wakomana wacho akakudherera unokwara. Saka anyora akati our shallow-minded ignoramuses with very limited intellectual capacity to both articulate their case or argue for it. These are the people who are advocating for, for 2030, which is a dead horse. Their intellectual depth is as deep as a slogan, and they come across a pitiful simpletons stranded on how to justify their inclusion in political matters that require serious brain work. Amene chirungu chawo ichi journalist vanochitora kupi wakomana wacho. Hanzi he was pointing at Jefferson Muswere is hopeless as a communicator, and he is supposed to be the chief communicator of this tremendously unpopular political move. Superman Wanzira would probably read it well if someone with brains wrote something for the cabal. Webster Shamu is as worthless as a pig's bladder hanging on a stick. As a reason of I read this article, Goma Freedom. I'm reading it right now. And unoputika nekuseka zvokutika nogona kuzotadza kuipedza article yarizini. Hanzi Webster Shamu, we are talking of Charleston Love. Hapana munhu asingazivi Webster Shamu muZimbabwe. Webster Shamu ndiye ainzi Charleston Love uya. Charleston Love tikada kutaura nyaya dzevanhu vakapera kuurawa muZimbabwe, especially kunana Mashonaland. He was the man behind the killing of a lot of politicians in our country. Achinzi Charleston Love. Saka akazochinja zita akunzi Webster Shamu. Ndiye Charleston Love yeuya wamainzwa nembiri yekuponda vanhu. Ndiye Webster Shamu. Ndiye. Saka hanzi Webster Shamu is as worthless as a pig's bladder hanging on a stick. And the social media foot soldiers, as Varakash, do not even rise to the level of this nonsense. Because level of nonsense ruta ronana Shamiri. Kana Varakash avaskepo. Arizin. Ndakabomtaura kana blazi ndokwirira ndege. Ndosvika nokushwi ngokuti ndiva uro. Wota ndochitaura zvawaitaura vane nharo. Anotuka. Saka zvikanzi there is no Jonathan Moyo equal to do agenda setting. George Charamba is conspicuous by his silence on the matter. Reason Wafaroa is fuming fire and brimstone from the opposite side, and there is hardly any propagandist worth the title running with this project. Rutendo Benson Matinyararire has tried to ride on it a bit, hoping to regain lost favor from his base in South Africa. But he is so far remains the unwanted outsider barking to be heard. ndakambomtsura mufana wangu Benson Matinyarari ndikati Benson ZANU-PF yauizive imbonyarara muning'ina. No matter all the noise he said, no matter all the noise he did, Benson until now ZANU-PF has never recognized him. Instead vakatomuvharira musi unoyu afly a drone paAfrica Unity Square vakamutora, they locked him up. Saka this is ZANU-PF for you. Ine vene vayo haisungonhonga chero muZimbabwe. No. Ine varidzi vayo zana. So the term extension here, bid, is the second most unpopular political suggestion in the history of the independence of Zimbabwe, only surpassed by the one-party state proposal of 1987. No one outside the circle of unelectable members of parliament and the criminals looting our tender system wants to hear about this extension. This is not even a partisan matter. Remember, Zimbabweans across the political divide are in Raku's anger against this highly unconstitutional political maneuver. Hanzi munhu Zimbabwean wese aisiye kuti kuzana, even muzanu macho arotaura kuti zvazviitike. So Muswere cannot talk about freedom of expression for his 2030s comrades, while in the speech he attacks the churches for their own freedom of expression. That is plain ridiculous and frankly stupid. The churches said they did not agree with the proposed extension, and there is nothing Western or imperialist about that. Emerson Mnangagwa is not a Robert Mugabe. And I can tell you that there is no single Western imperialist worried an inch about curtailing or removing Mnangagwa. He is simply not good enough to worry about. The reason as Mnangagwa is not simply good enough to worry about. So there is something called the domino effect in international affairs. And the West fears that thing. This is influencing other countries to threaten the Western interests globally. Robert Mugabe had the capacity. And the world listened to him. And he was a global icon, just like Fidel Castro, Hugo Chavez, Thomas Sankara, Muammar Gaddafi, and Anzi Aham Jadu of Iran, the Sarajevo kupronounce. Hansi Mnangagwa is one of the everyday thieving presidents of Africa, whose name isn't known anywhere outside the circles of the poor Zimbabweans he purports to be leading. He is of no concern at all to the West, and that is why they all loved him away when he embarked on his re-engagement drive. As vakatoseka vakati ibenziro mukabata nebenzi. So Robert Mugabe already defeated the West and they lost. So it was meaningless to re-engage with a nobody they never disregard with to begin with. I was key in the Robert Mugabe West 17-year diplomatic war, and I know what I'm talking about. This is the reason why Hans Muswere, they must think of cooking up a reasonable argument for the proposed term extension. The unfinished business line is as stupid as is senseless. Vision 2030 is a national vision started by the current president, not a narrow list of tasks for one person, and such Vision 2030 will go ahead even if Mnangagwa dropped dead as you read this piece. The United Nations and the MDG 2015 vision, which was presided over by a number of secretary generals, and now there is the clean energy vision running into the 2060s. Saka zvekuwara about 2030 zvazisiyana nazvo. Comrade Musa Madi, Elton Chitoa, zviri kusei baba? Ndiri kumbotaura nyaya apa ndiri kuseka hangu article yaRizi, because we are looking into the term the extension yaMnangagwa. Is it gonna work or succeed? My answer is no. Saka hanzi Jefferson, hanzi Jennifer, anonzi Jennifer, nafuka hanzi Jefferson, anonzi Jennifer Muswere, thank you so much. Knows the publicly stated position of President Mnangagwa, or at least he must be aware of it. And yet he is attacking the churches of saying exactly what the president has said. Why not begging the churches, as Webster Sham seems to be doing on the president's side? And what is this nonsense? What is this nonsense about MPs representing the people who voted for them? No one voted for an MP based on a promise to remove a presidential term. Hakuna mnakambodaro. Kuti anzi takuvotera this triple C member of parliament kuti vaende kunobvisa ma presidential term limits. Anzi hakuna zvakadaro. Or extend the duration of terms of thieves. Anzi hakuna mbodaro izvozvo. Term extension was not even in ZANU-PF manifesto. And is completely stupid and fatally dangerous to think that after winning a people's vote, you can turn around and do as you please because you say the vote allows you to think on behalf of the people. I think, and now 10 million flyers will be distributed to the people of Zimbabwe to conscientize them to what the MPs they elected are being forced to do in parliament. And I can assure you the backlash will be phenomenally catastrophic. Ndo kutaura kwa reason. I think this article, it deserves a lot of people to look into it. So what is it that we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen? I've read two articles. One from Tawanda, who is a lawyer. I don't know whether he's a constitutional lawyer or not. And the other one written by a journalist known as Reason Wafaroa. Reason is castigating. He's telling Waragash 23rd that you are all shallow. You are shallow-minded. You are people who lack intellectual capacity to read the situation. And and this Tawanda was quoting sections of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. He relied on, especially on section 95, subsection 2, 2A and B, which say nothing about the term limit extension and which say nothing about the extension and the amendment of the Zimbabwe Constitution. But he just gave it a lipstick view. Kutanzi chiratidzike kunge chakanaka. Tererai munzwe imi. Ndati nini. Members of parliament are at maka electa imimi. Vanogona kugara pasi. Vanogona kutaura muparliament kudebata. Kuti taisa term limit ya president kuti isvike pa 7 years. Izvozvo hapana anovarambidza. No one can stop them. Vana Shabangu vanogona kuti agree, as we all know, kuti vana Welshman Ncube na Shabangu ne Triple C, there are complicity in this matter. They can debate it. They can change whatever they want to change on paper. But here's the problem. They can extend the term. But how are they going to amend the constitution of the country? Because they can't do it without the people, without a referendum. And section 328 subsection 7 or whatever he was quoting, Arut can allow the parliament to insert. That is a term limit in our constitution. How are they going to do it? Are they going to tell those people who gazette without the people of Zimbabwe affirming? That will never happen. Not in a million years, that cannot happen. It needs a referendum. Saka, what I'm saying here, we are talking about amendment, a constitutional amendment and the presidential term limits. We are saying here, amendment is a formal change. Amendment is a formal change made to a law or to law, particularly legal documents. An update or correct a legal document in this particular a constitution of a country. It allows for adjustments to be made to existing constitution of the country to reflect new circumstances. To say in the constitution we are reflecting that the presidential term has now been extended to 7 years rather than 5 years. We are talking of amending those terms to reflect new circumstances or to correct mistakes. Amendments can add or amendments can update parts of agreement often used when it is better to change the whole document of the constitution than to write a new one. So you do an amendment. I'm not sure because kana vatotanga kuti vakuita a new kuti presidential term yakuitwa 7 years, that needs a constitutional amendment, and that constitutional amendment should be done through a referendum. And once it's done through a referendum, it is not going to benefit Mnangagwa. It's a different term that we want a 7-year term to be instilled. This term, because this one is already guided by the current 2013 constitution. And in more. Saka, understanding of section 328, why term limit extensions need a referendum. I am going to look into this. So first claim here is Parliament can insert a 7-year term without amending section 95. This is what ZANU-PF people think. They think that it's not a term limit amendment. It's just a duration change. Nadini is not legal mind. Kuvanhu veZANU-PF ndosakamanzwa reason wafaro ataurad those people who are advocating for this amendment, they are just lazy people. They are just shallow-minded people. These are ignoramuses who lack intellectual capacity to both articulate their cause or to argue their cause. They are just intellectually void or intellectually empty. They are just shallow-minded people. People who do not analyze things. What they claim is that, or what they think is that they can insert a 7-year term without amending section 95. They are saying it is, to them it's not a term limit, but it's just an amendment. They are saying it's just an amendment, just a duration change. They're taking it so simple. They think you can simply do it without a referendum. They are saying president can benefit from it. This is what they think, that Mnangagwa can benefit from this one. And they are saying no, the referendum is needed. Those who are kufurirana vachitaurirana mazana kuti no, the referendum is needed ipapa. Saka, if we look at this, people need to understand section 328, subsection 6 to subsection 7, right? The presidential term is 5 years. This is what is in subsection 328, in section 328, subsection 6 and 7. In section 95, these two sections of the Constitution are in agreement that the presidential term is 5 years. Any extension, 7 to 10 years, is an amendment. Zvandakashitaura zviya kuti ngatinzwisise the term amendment. And I've given you a dictionary meaning of the term amendment. Saka, any insertion or any extension to 7 or 10 years, that requires a referendum. And that referendum needs 90-day notice. It needs 2/3 parliamentary approval. What is happening here? Copy image. How best can I put this here? Come, yes. So what it needs, it needs 2/3 parliamentary approval in both houses, bicameral parliamentary system, where we have parliament and senator. So in parliament we must have 2/3. In senator we must have 2/3 of. Saka, the constitutional reality here, ladies and gentlemen, is any insertion affecting presidential term, any insertion in the constitution affecting a presidential term duration, it changes the effect of Section 95. Hence, it is an amendment to a term limit provision. That is a reality. Second reality is Section 328 subsection 7. It is triggered by any change extending time in office, regardless of wording. But any change in Section 95, it triggers this Section 328 subsection 7. It prohibits retroactive benefit. No current or a former president can gain from the extension. Ndosaka manzwa ndati uyo ari mukurrent term yake Mnangagwa is guided already by the current constitution. Any amendment to Section 95, it will trigger Section 328. And that means no one who is currently ruling or running Zimbabwe will benefit from this. And it more. So if you look at Section 28, subsection 6, it mandates a referendum for any amendment that affects Chapter 5. Any amendment that affects Chapter 5, that means Chapter 5 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe is the president's. Any amendment to that, it needs a referendum. Even passed, it cannot benefit the sitting president who has already held office before the change. Because chicharambidza Mnangagwa apa is change. Change yacho painongoitika, that means yakutarisa the next term of president, not the current one. Saka apana Mnangagwa paano benefita any term change iripo izvozvi. Ndosaka manzwa reason wafarowa ataura kuti these people are ignoramuses. They are just lazy idiots, shallow-minded people who lack this intellectual capacity to look into things objectively. And it mona. Saka vakomanaka nyika yedu Zimbabwe inyika yakadiwa na Mwari. If you look in 2022, Zimbabwe's president Emerson Mnangagwa sought to amend the constitution to extend his term beyond the constitutional limits of 2 5-year terms. This proposal was endorsed by the ruling ZANU-PF party at its annual conference in Mutare, where delegates instructed by government to begin drafting legislation to amend the constitution. The plan, known as Resolution Number 1, aims to keep Mnangagwa in power to 2030. Although it could require referendum to be implemented, the amendment process has sparked political debate, with some functions supporting the extension and other opposing it, reflecting the ongoing political dynamics in that party. MuZANU-PF imomo, mune vari kuzvifarira, mune vasiri kuzvifarira. Andiri murikona, vari kuita kutabvurana imomo muZimbabwe. As we all understand, Zimbabwe has got a new constitution. From the longest house constitution, they adopted a 2013 constitution. In the new constitution, presidential limits or presidential powers or office, or let me say, the new constitution limited the president or a presidential office or terms to 2 5-year term in office. And ipa yaka adoptwa constitution yaka adoptwa when Mugabe was there, and it didn't restrict re-election of Mugabe, because Mugabe, if he wanted, 2013 he just when we was the term limits ndopa muri kuona patikutaura kuti ma term limits ka aya Mnangagwa will not benefit, because pataka adopta constitution here Mugabe anga aripo, but Mugabe anga asiri bound to this new constitution. He was going to seek re-election. If Mugabe was re-elected now in 2013 to adopt this constitution, he would have stuck to 2 terms only. Apana pa iso benefita from there, because term yake yaizopinda ipapo yakanga yave restricted nechi ya guided ne this constitution. And murugona ndosaka Mugabe akaita seek re-election 2013, but term yaakazowina iyoyo from 2013 Mugabe anga asichakwanise kuti azoenda another 3rd term, aingoita another 2nd term Mugabe obva arowa pasi. And very simple is zvatiri kutaura. Saka regai tiende pa amendment of the constitution. I want Zimbabweans to understand that section 328, it talks about amendment of the constitution, right? Subsection 1 of section 328, it reads, in this section, constitutional bill means a bill that seeks to amend this constitution. Term limit provision means a provision of the constitution which limits the length of time that a person may hold or occupy a public office. An act of parliament that amends this constitution must do so in express terms. A constitutional bill may not be presented in the Senate or the National Assembly in terms of section 131 unless the Speaker has given the least 90 days notice in the Gazette of the precise term of the bill. Immediately after the Speaker has given notice of a constitutional bill in terms of subsection 3, Parliament must invite members of the public to express their views on the proposed bill in public meetings and through written submissions, and must convene meetings and provide facilities to enable the public to do so. This is the section 28. Ndikuiverenga yese kuti vanhu vainzwisise. Subsection 5 reads, a constitutional bill must be passed at its last reading in the National Assembly and the Senate by the affirmative votes of 2/3 of the members of each house. Parliament 2/3, Senate needs 2/3. Subsection 6, where a constitutional bill seeks to amend and any provision of chapter 4 or chapter 16, chapter 4 or chapter 16, chapter 4, it is chapter 4 are the limitation of fundamental human rights and freedoms. It has got, chapter 4 has got limitations of rights and freedoms. It has got limitations during emergency services. That is chapter 4. Saka vari kuti iwo kuti where a constitutional bill seeks to amend any provision of chapter 4 or chapter 16, within 3 months after it has been passed by the National Assembly and the Senate in accordance with the subsection 5, it must be submitted to a national referendum. Let me see chapter 16. What chapter 16 is? Chapter 8, chapter 11, chapter 13, chapter 18. We want chapter 16. Chapter 16 talks about finance. 16 subsection 1 talks about principles of finance, parliamentary control of state revenues and expenditure, limits of state borrowing, public debt and state guarantees, division of revenues between national and provincial governments and local authorities, funding for constitutional bodies and other institutions, consolidated revenue fund. It talks about finance in general. So the one that limits the rights of people and the one that talks about funding for the finance, for this to be amended within 3 months after it has been passed by the National Assembly and the Senate in accordance with subsection 6, it must be submitted to a national referendum. And if it is approved by a majority of the voters voting at the referendum, the Speaker of the National Assembly must cause it to be submitted without delay to the President, who must assent to and sign it forthwith. Ipapo. Saka, zvikureva kuti, tikaenda ku subsection 7, which is in contention here. Subsection 7 of section 328. It is saying, notwithstanding any other provision of this section, any amendment to a term limit provision, the effect of which is to extend the length of time that a person may hold or occupy any public office, does not apply in relation to any person who held or occupied that office or any equivalent office at any time before the amendment. This section is clear, ladies and gentlemen. This is section 7. Irutaurwa nemazano. Section 7 irutaura iye zviri pachena. Kuti iwewe kana uri holder of the president's office, for example, before this amendment, when the amendment is passed and the bill has been ascended by the president after the referendum, the incumbent is not going to benefit. I'm going to read this section again so that people can understand it. It is saying, notwithstanding any other provision of this section, an amendment to a term limit provision, the effect of which is to extend the length of time that a person may hold or occupy any public office, does not apply in relation to any person who held or occupied that office or any equivalent office at any time before the amendment. It's clear. Azvidikana nganga izvi. Azvidikana legal mind kuti avazokuudza kuti iwewe kana uri ndiwe uri president, ukaita champion for this amendment, iwewe you are not allowed to benefit. No section 7 zvainoreva. The subsection 7 of section 328. Iri kutaura kuti iwewe before the amendment kana waive wakabata chigaro iwewe haubvumirwi nemutemo wenyika. This is our supreme law. It does not allow anyone holding a position now to benefit in any amendment ichaitwa category rinoena. Ukaenda ku subsection 8, iri kutaura kuti subsection 6 and 7 must not both be amended in the same. they must rekanidzokerere pamwana wanga panzwisisa hanzi subsection 6 nesubsection 7 must not both be amended in the same constitutional bill, nor may amendments to both these subsections be put to the people in the same referendum. Saka zviri kunzi mimi where a constitutional bill seeks to amend finance, to amend term limits human rights evanhu zvinoitirwa referendum yazvo zvega, hazviitwe zviri pamwe chete, hazvisanganiswe nesection 7. Saka subsection 7 iri kutaura iyo kuti hakuna ane office nhasi kana ari muparliament nhasi achabenefita kana amendment ikaitwa. Patinozoenda isusu vana Yuda kuita members of parliament pa2028 apa ndisi tinozobenefita kuti term yedu isusu inenge ya 7 years. Saka I will be 14 years in parliament, and the first 7 years ndikazovhoterwa dzimwe 7 years I will be 14 years in parliament. Not kuti avaripawa zvavharana. Saka Triple C vanasengezo shabangwa nani vai vana Welshman, you are not bound to benefit from this, so stay away from an illegal amendment. Saka regai ndiverenge yese kuti subsection 8 ndo zvairi kutaura ndaiverengai. Subsection 9, subsection 8 iri kutaura kuti zvema finance nema human rights kana mda kuzvaamenda zvinoenda pazvo zvega. Presidential term limit kana ida kuamendwa inoamendwa payo yega. You cannot mix or do this referendums acho pamwe chete. Saka subsection 8 ndaiverenga. Subsection 9 ikuti this section may be amended only by following the procedures set out in subsection 3, 4, 5 and 6 as if this section were contained in chapter 4. Saka vari kuti hanzi section iyoyi yati kutaura nezvayo yekuamenda constitution hanzi inofana kuamendwa muchifollowa 3, 4, 5 and 6 subsections. Nzwisisai. Thanks Greg. Vanhu ngavanzwisise mutemo. This is your constitution. This is what your constitution says. Saka manzwa reason wafaro ataura kuti this amendment is being advocated by lazy and shallow-minded people, the ignoramuses with very limited intellectual capacity to both articulate their case or argue for it. Hanzi vanhu vari kuzviita hanzi imimi you are cuckoo, you don't understand. This is clear. The constitution is clear and it's not vague. Anditi maona. Saka hanzi kuti chikudiwa apa vasati vaamenda constitution, vasati vaamenda anything, vanofana kutanga vaita amendment of constitution. Vanofana kutanga vaamenda chapter 328 amendment of the constitution. Kana vaamenda chapter 328 ndopo vanozotanga kuta amend presidential terms machi. That is not feasible. It's not gonna be easy for ZANU-PF. Saka hanzi subsection 10, when a constitutional bill is presented to the president for assent and signature, it must be accompanied A, by a certificate from the speaker that its final vote in the National Assembly, the bill received the affirmative votes of at least 2/3 of the membership of the Assembly, and a certificate from the President of the Senate that at its final vote in the Senate, the bill received the affirmative votes of at least 2/3 of the membership of the Senate. Saka hanzi Mnangagwa asati asaina an amendment anofana kuwana certificate iroro riri kutaura kuti kusenate takawana 2/3, kuparliament takawana 2/3. Saka vana veZimbabwe mese muvana veZimbabwe ndimo vanda kuchema nawo kuti members of parliament arimo aya ndimi makamavhotera imimi. Muri imi makamavhotera, iyi ndo temu yawo yekutanga, especially vari mutriple C. Handisi kuona vakomana vachizodzokera again into parliament, considering what transpired nana Shabangu nana Welshman. Handisi kuona vakomana vachidzokera muparliament. Saka ndiri kutaura inini kuti under such circumstances takufanirwa isusu kuve vanhu vane muono wakanaka, because muono wakanaka wandiri kutaura panapa uri kubvira panyaya yandafonerwa nasekuru vangu vachintaurira. Vanditi muzukuru, ndoda kuti umbotarisa iwewe constitutional court application yakaitwa nemukomana anonzi Jealous Mawarire. Vakomana aka I know kuti Jealous Mawarire togona kutadza kumupa mbiri, chatogona kutadza kupa Jealous Mawarire mbiri ndechekuti pakutanga Jealous uyu akashandiswa neZANU-PF. ZANU-PF yaida kuita ambush opposition political party isina kugadzirira ma-elections a2013. Nekuti opposition yainetsera anonzi ataiti ma-electoral reforms. Saka opposition yanga yapadhuze kuachiva ma-electoral reforms in 2013. Saka vapadhuze kuachiva ma-electoral reforms ayaye, vana Jealous vakabva vanzi wakomana tarisai muone ma-electoral reforms akaitwa yakaya takuvara. Because opposition yanga yakupressurize kuti Mugabe term must be extended with 6 months so that ma-electoral reforms anobva asainwa aitwa toenda kuelection nema-reforms. Ndo zvaichemerwa naMudhara Tsvangirai, you still remember that time. Vadaro manje vakomana vezanu vana Chinamasa vakaona kuti nana Jonathan Moyo vakaona kuti no, takuwadzwa nana Biti panapa. Vana Biti vatitamba vatoda kutora 10 note. Ndobva vadrafta in application vachishandisa Jealous Mawarire. Ndobva vaenda kucourt, constitutional court, Mawarire achichallenge Mugabe kuti azviite kuti term yaMugabe extendwe ne6 months. Mugabe within these 6 months, I think by next month Mugabe anofanira akutotaura proclaim ma-dates general election. Saka akatadza kumaproclaima izvozvi hatisina constitution, term yacho inenge yaexpire. Saka zvakureva kuti Mugabe anenge atowepo illegally and constitutionally. Vana Jealous Mawarire nana Jonathan Moyo nevamwe vaifunga kuti they are ma-intellectuals in regard to our constitution vakabva vaita an agent application vachibva vaenda kuconstitutional court. Constitutional court nyaya yakanonzwikwa naJustice ainzi aniko Mudhara uyo, I'll let you know. Saka ainzi aniko gaitone ainzi aniko Mudhara Justice what's case number? Case yacho inonzi Mawarire versus Mugabe NO and ORS constitutional application 146 of 2013 ZWCC1 30 May 2013 Chidya usiku. I think this was Justice Chidya usiku. I'm going to the end of the document so that I find it. Because this yanga ya appeal yatakaita isusu, the people of Zimbabwe against Chidya usiku's judgment, which went through Malava. And then our appeal was dismissed, and the Jealous Mawarire won that appeal. Saka pana Jealous Mawarire, he won this appeal. This is what day. No, I'm not. I'm not. I don't want to what day. I'm looking for Jealous Mawarire. Amendment. Jealous Mawarire. Kesi yakanakidza. Saka kesi ikai ndo ina advantage yedu isusu. Yeah, it was Justice Chidya usiku. Thanks. It was Justice Chidya usiku. So this was a constitutional court application that was made by Jealous Mawarire against our wishes to have Mugabe's term extended by 6 months so that we can have all the electoral reforms signed and we go into an election with ZANU-PF. After ZANU-PF sensing defeat and they knew the opposition was not prepared for 2023 election, they made this application utilizing or using Jealous Mawarire. So what happened now? It was between May and June 2013. Mawarire filed a case with the Constitutional Court challenging President Robert Mugabe to set dates for presidential and parliamentary elections by June 29. Mofela really say. So by June 29, Jealous Mawarire eyed out Mugabe vadaidzire kuti my elections avako. Jealous Mawarire, he was arguing that the principles of the government of national unity, they risked violating the constitution of the country. Chief Justice Godfrey Chijgausiku ruled in favor of Jealous Mawarire's application and ruled that it was legally impossible to hold elections by 29th of June, but said the elections should take place no later than 31st of July 2023. Chijgausiku's ruling was supported by 6 other judges. Because vakataura vakati, extension of presidential limit kana ichinge ya expire, it's illegal. It's illegal. So you cannot extend the presidential limit when it expires. This is precedence that Mnangagwa's balls are tied to. Mnangagwa is tethered to this precedence. At the time of the application, it was widely believed that Mawarire was a plant from ZANU-PF, meant to give traction to the former ruling party's bid for an early election. In an interview with a private newspaper, Mawarire defended himself and said that he had acted alone as concerned citizen who wanted to see the rule of law prevail in our country. ZANU-PF was shooting itself on the foot. Mawarire was ZANU-PF. He wanted an early election. And he declared that the Constitutional Court declared in Mawarire's case that it's illegal to extend the term limit when it expires. So Mugabe cannot do that. Emerson Mnangagwa cannot do that. He cannot do that. But Mawarire pakabvunzwa, and we knew Mawarire was being used in a ZANU-PF. Pakabvunzwa Mawarire akataura kuti when I approached the Constitutional Court with my application on 2 May 2013, my drive and overcharging conviction was not to make history, but to correct it. But ipapo kuti Jealous Mawarire akati iye he didn't want to make history, but he wanted to correct the history. He said, we were surely, and for some time, between June and 31 July, living in an unfortunate historical epoch where President Mugabe, former Prime Minister Tsvangirai, and the government were governing without a parliament, and this country was mutating into a dictatorship that I felt would have resulted in a leadership accountable to itself. And if this did not frighten you, then certainly nothing about bad governance will. Saka, Jealous Mawarire, what he said during that time is still standing. Kuti, pakangoitwa term limit, extension ya Mnangagwa, ne parliament, zvakutoreva kuti Zimbabwe is mutated into dictatorship, which you and me must feel would result in a leadership accountable to itself. We cannot have a country with the leaders who are accountable to themselves, with a parliament which is accountable to itself, with an expired term, but a fictitious extension so that they be accountable to themselves. This is exactly what the Jealous Mawarire failed that time, and this is when he stated about bad governance, and he took it upon himself, although we knew he was an implant of ZANU-PF who went to shoot down our idea to say in 6 months' time, we would have achieved this and signed for. Amy. But ipapo, good ZANU-PF, so it's not possible for Emmerson Mnangagwa to extend his term by 2 years, considering this precedence from Jealous Mawarire. And what Jealous Mawarire said after that is what is binding to the people of Zimbabwe. To say now we have mutated into a dictatorship. So Mawarire failed would have resulted in a leadership accountable to itself, and this did not frighten you. If it doesn't frighten you, if it doesn't frighten those in ZANU-PF, if it doesn't frighten those CCC members of parliament who are being bribed to accept a 2/3 majority for Mnangagwa to go through in his third term, then if that doesn't frighten you, then we have mutated into a dictatorship. Jealous Mawarire went on to say, I was on May 31, when the Concord ruled in my favor, I am still convinced I made the right decision. Saka, I am saying, Mawarire made the right decision by approaching courts to stop that term limit and force Mugabe to proclaim a date for elections. That is gonna be the same story with you and me, that we must approach. I don't think by now we need to approach the Concord. The precedence is just there. The Yes I Can organization will assist in terms of implementing everything. And it more. Because obvious, you and me, and those in ZANU-PF, those shallow-minded idiots, syncopas, they are convinced by now with what I'm saying, stating here, that we don't need to mutate into dictatorship. We don't need a leadership that will be accountable to itself, not to the people of Zimbabwe. A parliament with an expired term, accountable to itself. Boss Mawarire, he stated that he knew the economic situation in Zimbabwe was not good. But I also know that the people making a lot of noise are those that lost the elections and subsequently lost the privileges that came with being in government. So if you look at what is happening now in parliament, where the Shabang who lost elections, Shabang lost elections, his people lost elections, and he doesn't have the mandate of the people to lead the CCC. And those people who lost that elections are the ones, history repeats itself here, are the ones who are making a lot of noise. Because they have no privileges of being in parliament. Vanashabong, they got in parliament through a back door, but they lost elections. His people lost elections and enforced himself through bribery. So, Jealous Mawarire said, despite that the economy is good, he knows that the people making a lot of noise are those that lost the elections and subsequently lost the privileges that came with being in government. Mawarire said, I'm aware most of those who lost have fallen on the hard times. Shabangwe had fallen into hard times. All those people he brought to parliament had fallen into hard times. If this class represents all Zimbabweans in your own definition, then surely you should think again about your characterization of a Zimbabwean. What I did was to afford the people of Zimbabwe their democratic right to choose their leaders, and that is government does not, that government does is nothing of my business. I managed to set a precedence that elections should be held when they are due, and whether this government they choose, whichever government they choose will deliver. It is outside the import of my court application. Saka Jealous Mawarire has alluded that I managed to set a precedent. So we have got a precedent here where Emerson Mnangagwa will not amend the constitution to allow 7 years of running Zimbabwe illegitimately. And imona. Saka izvozvo varume ndorati munzwisise kuti Zimbabwe it adopted a 2013 constitution. The adoption of the 2013 constitution of Zimbabwe, this was a significant political event that aimed to address various issues and improve governance. The new constitution was adopted by a referendum. And this referendum was held on March 16 and 17 of 2013. And it was approved by 94% of the vote, or of voters. The constitution, it introduced several key changes to it, including the establishment of an independent prosecuting authority, a peace and reconciliation commission, and an anti-corruption commission. It also abolished the position of prime minister, and it limited the presidential terms to 2 5-year terms. You can serve 2 5-year terms in office. The new constitution aimed to promote democracy, good governance, and the rule of law, while also recognize the richness of our country, the richness of Zimbabwe's natural resources, and Zimbabwe's traditions. That inini. This constitution of Zimbabwe, which was adopted in 2013, it was a significant event since this constitution was adopted by a referendum voted by 94% of the voters. You cannot wake up today and bastardize the constitution, which earned 94% of the voters. Any amendment that needs to be done in this constitution, it has to be given a thumbs up by those 94% voters who voted for its adoption. It was done through a referendum. So you cannot bastardize it. Mnangagwa, if he wants term extension, he must go into a referendum and have a thumbs up of the constitution. That in share this presentation so that Zimbabweans understand what we are talking about. Ndoda kuti mutaurirewo mukuru azivewo kuti Zimbabwe constitution yayo it was adopted after a referendum. So to our veteran lawyer and the prominent businessman, Tawanda Nyambirai, I think, my brother, you have got a legal mind. Don't lead Emerson Mnangagwa astray. Zimbabwe's 2013 constitution has been adopted after a referendum of 94% voters. Any amendment that should be done to that constitution, it has to follow section 328 subsection 7. And or any presidential limit that the parliament debates, the bill passed with a 2/3 majority, for it to be inserted into a constitution, it needs an amendment. And I have defined amendment here. That amendment is a formal change made to law document or made to law. A good example, a legal document, a constitution of a country. So you need to update or correct it. Once updated and corrected, you will be sort of making adjustments to make the existing document or the existing constitution to reflect new circumstances. That means you have corrected mistakes. You have amended mistakes. You have added or updated parts of the constitution. For that to happen, my brother, you need a referendum. According to section 328, for an amendment to presidential terms, to the presidents, an amendment to the presidents, including the terms. Because when we talk about presidents, we talk of everything that affects the president. So for you to do that, you need an amendment, you need a referendum. So don't mislead these people. You are a person with a legal mind. And kuvanyepera hakuna chinobatsira mgomongo. Hakuna chinobatsira zvachose. Because when we talk of extension, I've said here, we refer to an increase in duration of presidential term or of a contract we have with Emerson Mnangagwa. So an extension is we are like increasing the duration of president's term in office. So his duration, if we increase it, we say we are extending it. And that extension can be debated in parliament. Nothing can stop ZANU-PF from debating it. Can be debated even in the Senate. Nothing can stop senators from debating it. After they pass it, 2/3 in the Senate, 2/3 in the parliament, 2/3 the parliament, 2/3 senator. Once it is passed there, they are not going to take the bill to the gazette, to be gazetted without the 94% who voted for adoption of this constitution to be amended. So you need to go back to the people and say, look, takamboti debatai, tikadebata ku parliament, takubvumirana kuti ngatiingirizei term yaMnangagwa to what? To 7 years. Saka muchaenda imimi, vanhu voenda vonovhota. Kana vanhu vachinge vavhota futi, pane rimwe dambudziko hombe rekuti kuma section 328 ikoko kuri kutaurwa nezvekuti aripo uyu akapinda muoffice pasati paitwa this amendment haana chaanobenefita. Saka vaMnangagwa cannot benefit from this. Zvakuzobenefita next term, achapinda as president for that next term. Saka don't waste mari yeZimbabwe muchitenderera muchipa vanhu mota, muchitenderera muchipa vanhu muchida kutenga hazviita bhozi muri kupa vanhu 5 mota amendment yeconstitution ndwa kutiwa nemuzimbabweni wese neniwo shepard yuda ndakagara kuno ndodawo kuvhota musi waamendment yacho. Saka don't waste your time guys, don't waste resources. Let's focus on munhu wamuchaisa imimi kuti aite a presidential candidate for 2028 kuti achanga achifesana nani. As things stand in Zimbabwe, that person will be facing Nelson Chamisa again. Because all the opposition parties are dead. There is no Monzora there. There is no Shabang, no Welshman there. Because kutaura kwatiri kuita ndiko kuti muZimbabwe, I still remember nguva yedu nana Mudhara Tsvangirai. Taitenge tine a shadow cabinet yataive nayo. Yataitoziva kuti vakada kutaura zvefinance tendai anovakatya anohamire. Saka each and every ministry yegovernment yeZimbabwe yaitenge ine a proponent in forms of a shadow cabinet which we elect today. Ndosaka muri kuona vachiita zvavanoda. Vananiki Bangwana nana George Charamba ava ndisitinge chitovabata zvombo. Because hakuna opposition vanhu vari kustenda against them. They are talking nonsense. Saka tinoya isusu tichita charge on those nini campops, knocking sense into whatever they say. And well, boss, I am well informed about what is happening in Zimbabwe at this juncture. And more. Uko George Charamba oya tisina basa naye because George Charamba himself achade kufaka nzwa chinjonzi Emerson Mnangagwa. George Charamba is now positioning himself for the next president of that country or part. Zvaakaita pana Mugabe, aona kuti Mugabe is now very unpopular. George Charamba akanyora Heroes Acre statement. Akapa Mugabe pa opening of Zimbabwe Parliament. George Charamba akapa Mugabe speech yeku Heroes Acre. And Mugabe akangotora speech yakaenda muparliament akanoiverenga. Akutaura, we have got that here to bury our hero. Parliament, opening of parliament. Which hero are we burying? George Charamba was trying to expose kune vanhu kuti Mudhara ane dementia, Mudhara yaakurwara. This is what he is doing currently. Saka mwana Themba Muliswa vakamugara bamba kuti George Charamba mutengesi. Because he has managed to put Mnangagwa down. Ukatasa ma speech anonyorera Mnangagwa naye nyorera Mugabe zvakatosiyana. Ndosaka manzwa even reason wafauro ataura akati no. Even the West are not interested in removing Mnangagwa. Because he's a toothless bulldog. Listen to his speeches. He even lacks charismatic. Yokuti akadontaura pa podium vanhu vese vanhu Mugabe aita achitaura vaigara vese vanhu kuteerera. What is this old man saying? But kuna Mnangagwa anogona hakuna anouya munenge mune ma empty chairs. Takazviona ku COP 26 kwatakaendawo aive ari ega Mnangagwa achitaura nemacheya. Ataona bozi havana basa naye, havatombomuvhunduki bozi haana kadhati. Ndosaka manzwa reason wafauro aita kuti aiuya atyisana basa nokuti haana kadhati. Saka ndiri kutaura nchiti amendment haichabudi varume. Kana muri vamwe zvenyu zvadhakwa. Regai nditaura kuti good night mukoma Shepherd Youth.
All they ever do is to still and denying our face. Their government is an abomination. I swear, my brother, no respect for humanity. Fake pastor who do not know God are made ambassadors to smuggle gold. Charlatans like a ransom. Uber devil, nothing angelic about it. J. Israel and crew, criminals with the Bible fake prayers so they can fool the evil regime. Oh, shameless musicians like Jah Praiser, Olivia, Gospel Mafia. You have no idea it's broken to pieces. And Lutex prison officer shepherding you. Hey, Zimai, give to Salos, I forget contact. Our country is broken, stolen and torn apart. Hand in hand. How do I tell my story? The future of Zimbabwe There's corruption, silenced our mouth. Yeah. Zimbabwe is broken, mama. Mama. Yeah. Can I tell you my story? Back in the day, this country was working. Listen, brother.